This Lionel Santa Fe ALCO has seen a lot of use over its years. The shell is nicked up and some of the decals are scraped, but it's all here. And the frame is one of the easier things to make look better. It has sort of a blued finish, almost like a gunmetal finish, but rust has found its way into some of the little nooks and crannies. So I tried sanding it first, thinking that I could just get by with spraying the frame while it was still attached to the trucks, but it needed more work than that. So out came this idea of soaking the metal frame in vinegar. And apparently the acid does a good job of neutralizing the rust as well as removing that blued finish. A day goes by and it's now out of the vinegar. The rust is mostly gone, but I still want to use some sandpaper and a wire brush in my drill, and that gets the metal looking nice and shiny like this. It's almost good enough for just a clear coat, but I'm going to paint it black. I don't have the chemicals needed to restore the blued finish, so I will use Rustoleum Gloss Black spray paint. The wheel assemblies are in pretty good shape overall. The side frames are plastic, so those just need to be cleaned, and then they will look like new. But the couplers could use a little bit of work. So I think with a toothbrush and some cleaning, I will get them ready for also a coat of glossy black spray paint. The couplers are riveted in place, so I had to paint them while they were still attached to the assembly. But with careful masking, they turned out pretty nicely, and there is no overspray on any other pieces that were not originally painted black. The base also receives several light coats of glossy black spray paint, and once the wheel assemblies are reattached, you get something that looks like this. It looks brand new. You can almost shave with the reflection you see in the finish. It's not like what you would see from the factory, but I still really like it. And it looks really good underneath the shell of this Alco. It really helps its appearance. This is another bargain from a different train show. At one point it was a powered Lionel ALCO, but the motors were removed and the seller described it as a dummy unit. Well, it doesn't really roll like a dummy unit, but overall, it was a bargain. For only 10 bucks, I decided to, have some fun with this. I think this might be described as a post-war Alco. Almost everything, aside from the shell, is made of metal. The frame, the trucks, the side frames, the couplers, everything is metal. And the best part is, most of it comes apart with screws. A lot of later Lionel equipment would be held together with rivets or stamped together. This can come apart and be repainted. Rust really isn't a problem with this engine, but the old finish is. And vinegar wouldn't do much with the old paint, so I sprayed it all with Easy Off oven cleaner, wrapped it in saran wrap for a few days, and then when it came out, it was pretty clean. I used my Dremel tool with a wire wheel brush just to get any last little remnants of the old paint before I applied my new paint. I masked off and spray painted the couplers a nice glossy black, and the side frame pieces were painted silver. If you remember the Lionel F3s of the 1950s decorated for Santa Fe, they had silver bottoms, silver frames, and silver side frames like this. And I always thought that was a pretty classy look, so I thought I would give this a try for this old Alco. Silver side frames. Look how nice these older trains go back together. If they were broken, they were meant to be repaired. And because they were repairable and not discardable, it also makes them nice candidates for restoration or repainting. You can really work on one of these old trains. It's not too hard. Turning this back into a powered unit would just be too expensive. So instead, I'm just going to display it on my shelf or maybe on my layout off on a siding. I'm not usually a fan of yellow, but when you combine it with the navy blue and the white lettering of the Baltimore and Ohio rail lines, I think it turned out pretty striking, is the word I would use, especially with those silver side frames. It looks really good. It's one of my favorite pieces, I think. This is a powered frame from an Amtrak F3 diesel. It's from the 1970s, built during the MPC era when they owned the Lionel Corporation, and they were cutting costs back then. That's maybe why they have only one motor in this unit. It still pulls really well, but it's been played with, and the black has a lot of little nicks and chips in it, so I think this would be a good candidate for just a freshening with some new black paint. A train collector, a purist, would probably have trouble with what I'm about to do. I'm altering the originality of these frames. But as long as it's a train that I plan on keeping in my collection without looking at it as an investment or thinking about selling it down the road, I'm fine with just improving the appearance of the parts that I can. So taking this frame apart and repainting the base and the trucks, I think is the right choice for me. It's definitely the right choice for this Amtrak unit. It's going to look a lot better when I'm done, and it will almost pass for the original paint. I'm not trying to fool anybody by making them think that this is, an original that's in really good shape. If I ever were to sell it, I'd tell them that the base and frame had been repainted. But this is just for me, so I really don't have a problem with it. This is from the 1970s, so these parts are stamped together, not like the parts that were screwed together in that post-war ALCO. They can still be cleaned, they can still be repainted, but it's just not as user-friendly as something that's a little bit older. All of these parts need to be cleaned and wet sanded. The wet sanding is nice because the sandpaper itself lasts a really long time. There's no airborne dust when you wet sand, and it does a really good job of blending in any scratches or nicks in a painted finish. So I'm a big fan of wet sanding. I could have stripped this base back to bare metal and started with fresh paint, but most of the old black paint was still in pretty good shape. The wheel assemblies are not too bad either. They are just a little bit greasy and needed a good cleaning. Instead of a glossy black, for this base, I'm using a satin black finish spray paint, also by Rustoleum. I think it's called Canyon Black. And for some reason, it dried a little less satiny on the base, but I would almost call it a semi-gloss. I've used it before, and this came out shinier than what I was expecting. It's still fine. I still like it. It's just a little shinier than what you would have seen from Lionel in the 1970s. Taking this base apart, repainting it, putting it back together took maybe 2 days, and most of that was just spent waiting for the paint to dry. Now that it's back together with the shell, I think it helps the appearance of this nearly 45-year-old F3 a whole lot. It looks way younger than 45, don't you think? It looks maybe like it's only 5 or 10 years old. This is the first powered and complete F3 that I ever bought, and it's hard to believe that it was only about a year ago. It's from the 1970s, the MPC era, just like the Amtrak train you just saw, but the trucks and the frame are silver instead of black. It also has just a single motor, a reversing unit, the pickup rollers on the front trucks. Those all come apart pretty easily, but silver shows nicks just about as badly as black does. So I'm going to repaint these so that the bottom of this Santa Fe F3 looks like new again. This base and the wheel assemblies also were scrubbed and wet sanded, and they're also masked off in preparation for the new silver paint. Those rear steps had to be left on because they were riveted in place, but with some careful masking, I think they should look fine when I'm done. So here's the finished result. I think the front apron especially turned out nice. Wet sanding does a great job of blending in any little nicks and scratches. This looks factory fresh to me, and the sheen of the silver is very close to the shell, so I think these will match together pretty nicely. Unless you look very, very closely, I think it would be hard to tell that these steps were left in place when that frame was repainted. I'm happy with that line. And look how nice the silver looks. Am I saying nice too much in this video? I might be. But these black couplers were also repainted glossy black before they were reinstalled on the wheel assemblies. What's the point of having great looking silver paint on your base and trucks if you're going to have scruffy couplers? There's no excuse for scruffy couplers. Paint them. Make them look nice. Oh, I said nice again. So how much better does this look now that it's been repainted? From, I don't know, would you call that the belt line down? This looks like a brand new locomotive. This base is completely fresh, clean, shiny, and it looks great. It's almost like something from the factory. I keep saying that, but this is really close this time. I don't have great plans for the shell. The shell has a little bit of wear too, but it's improved a lot by having this great looking base underneath it now. I think I can live with it, just letting it alone for now. If you want to make your trains look better, I would suggest looking towards the frames, the base, the bottom end of these locomotives. That's where a lot of work can be done. It's not too difficult, and the results really help everything else on your locomotive to look better. Even this nicked shell, from certain angles, it looks almost new, and I'm very happy with it. I hope maybe this inspired you a little bit. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and until next time, this has been Bob's Workshop. Take care.